Hello, everybody. It's me. I'm Jax James, NORML State Policy Manager, and you're probably wondering, where were you yesterday, Jax? Because I normally come and have this state policy update with y'all on Fridays, but as you may recall from watching previous streams, I am based out of Texas. I am the executive director for Texas NORML, and we had a really great strategy planning meeting planned for Friday, where we were meeting with legislators and people that are part of our coalition and having conversations about the upcoming session. So I apologize for not being here on Friday, but I have a really good excuse, you guys. And you say, oh, well, Jax, legislative session isn't until January of 2023 for Texas. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of work to do. And that takes a lot of planning. So I feel like I'm so dark in here. I might turn on a light real quick. One sec. I feel a little bit better about that. Okay. All right, so what I want to do is I want to go through our weekly update like we normally do, and then I'll come back to the comments and check in on the states that y'all are from and see if there's anything in particular moving in your state that you can participate in. So if you're watching right now, I encourage you to drop your state in the comments so that we know where you're from and I can take a look at that. I also want to let you know not every state is in a legislative session. As I said, Texas session isn't until January of 2023 because we have a 2-year cycle here. But there are several states that still do have legislation, or more than several states that still have legislation moving through their chambers. Now, I will say this is not a list of every active bill. It is the highlights of bills that are moving. And so that's why I encourage you to, drop your state below so that I can come back and make sure that we highlight all of those. Now, if you're watching later and I'm not able to get to the state that you want to have covered, I encourage you to go to norml.org/act. And you'll see all of our federal action alerts. And then under that is a dynamic map. And you can hover over your state and it'll show you all of the bills that are moving in your state, assuming legislative session is in cycle. So let's go ahead and kick it off. We've got some great things happening across the country this week in state policy, and we're doing A to Z. I like to mix it up, but this week it's A to Z, and we're going to start with Alaska, HB 246. This would seal the records of those with low-level convictions from 9 certain types of criminal history background checks. People with otherwise clean records don't deserve to have the rest of their lives derailed because of a past marijuana conviction, especially because it would no longer be prosecuted today in Alaska. So HB 249 has passed the House and now advances to the Senate. So if you are watching from Alaska, I encourage you to go to the blog and click on the action alert link there so that you can send a message to your lawmakers in support of this effort. There were a lot of hearings moving in California last week. If you are not linked in with California NORML and you live in the state, I definitely encourage you to reach out with them. They do wonderful work there. But what I'm going to talk about really are the 2 main bills that California is, well, maybe not main, but 2 of the really important priority bills that California NORML is focusing on. One has to do with pain patients' rights, and that's AB 1954, and it passed through the Assembly Business and Professions Committee 18-0 on 4/19, and now heads to the Appropriations Committee. Every state's a little different. Sometimes you just have to make it through one committee. Sometimes you have to make it through multiple committees. So in this case, AB 1954, having to do with pain patients' rights, advances through the next stage of the process. So there is a link there for you to participate in. There's also legislation having to do with employment rights, AB 2188, and that passed through the Assembly Labor Committee on 4/20, and now will be going to the Judiciary Committee on the 26th. So make sure that you click there and support AB 2188 for employment rights. There is a quote from Assemblymember Alex Lee from 4/20, which he said, on this day when so many are celebrating 4/20, they should not be fearful of losing their job, especially for something that can linger in their system and not be related to impairment. So definitely appreciate the work that California NORML and legislators are doing out there. And I appreciate all of y'all tuning in to spend your Saturday morning with me for a moment. All right, Colorado. So Senate Bill 99 seeks to streamline the existing automatic record sealing process for marijuana offenders and extends it to all offenses, including civil infractions. So if passed, this bill would provide employment and tenant protections for those with sealed criminal records. SB 99 has passed the Senate and it now heads to the House. So if you live in Colorado and you want to support strengthening and streamlining the expunction and record sealing process there, I encourage you to go to the blog linked in the description, click there and participate in our action alert. Quite a bit of legislation moving in Louisiana. There were quite a few hearings and some of the bills did advance. So I wanted to let you know that House Bill 135 and 137, which would provide reciprocity for patients within the state medical cannabis program, have both been advancing. So HB 137 passed favorably from the House Committee on Administration of Criminal Justice, and HB 135 passed favorably from the House Committee on Health and Welfare, and they've both now advanced to the floor. In addition, House Bill 190 authorizes nurse practitioners with prescriptive authority to recommend medical marijuana to patients. HB 190 passed favorably from the House Committee on Health and Welfare, and it advances to the floor as well. I'm just going to check in on the comments real quick, just see what you guys are doing over here. All right. Okay, so I'm seeing you guys dropping your states in there. I really appreciate that. I'm going to come back for any states that I don't touch on here and check and see what actions are moving in your area. Okay, so let's talk about Massachusetts. So Senate Bill 2823 outlines social equity provisions for the state's cannabis industry, as well as expectations for the establishments of new businesses. The bill also allows localities and municipalities to put questions specific to the establishment of local marijuana businesses up for a public vote. Additionally, House Bill 4699 prohibits employment discrimination based on one's lawful consumption of cannabis. The bill also ensures that pre-employment screening is restricted so that only prospective employees with a job offer can be asked to perform a drug test. So if you live in Massachusetts, there are 2 action alerts there. This is newly filed legislation that you can participate in. All right, talking about Missouri. So first, I do want to mention in Missouri, there is a ballot initiative effort called Legal Missouri 22. They are collecting signatures, and there are still more that need to be collected in order for them to reach the threshold by the deadline. So if you live in Missouri, of course, I encourage you to go to a signing location, volunteer to collect signatures, etc. But this is having to do with the legislative process, which is currently underway. So this bill is House Bill 2703, and it makes changes to state law that would allow 21 and up to possess cannabis from licensed retailers. It also allows adults to cultivate 12 plants for personal use. It contains expungement and resentencing provisions so that those on probation and parole would be allowed to use cannabis. It also prevents police from using the odor of marijuana alone to conduct a warrantless search of a person's private property. It stipulates that cannabis cannot be used as a factor in a family court proceeding, and it also stipulates that medical cannabis patient information cannot be shared with federal authorities. So the update on HB 2704 is that it cleared the second House committee on Tuesday, and they are sending the proposal to the floor with just a few weeks to go before the legislative session ends. So those in Missouri, you can participate there. All right, let's talk about New Hampshire. A couple great things happening in New Hampshire. House Bill 1598 sought to legalize the possession of cannabis by adults and establish a system for retail sales through state-owned stores. And at HB 1598, the Senate Ways and Means Committee held a hearing on the bill on 4/20 to determine, and they determined it was inexpedient to legislate, and therefore they have extended this into the special session for the Senate, or I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong bill. One moment. Excuse me. I was Mixing it with the second bill. Let me start over again in New Hampshire. Okay. 1598 sought to legalize possession of cannabis by adults through a retail system that had state-owned stores. The Senate Ways and Means Committee held a hearing on 420 and determined it was inexpedient to legislate and therefore likely killing the bill for the session, though there is an opportunity through extreme measures that it could come back to life. So stay tuned on that. HB 629 permits 21 and up to legally possess 3/4 of an ounce of cannabis, 5 grams of hash, and grow 6 marijuana plants. Statewide polling shows 68% of New Hampshire adults support the legalization of small amounts, and the Senate floor did debate HB 629, and they ordered, or what they issued was what's known as a special order. So they special ordered the bill to the next Senate session, which is anticipated to take place within several weeks. So we do hope to see more movement on that within the next maybe 2 weeks or so, depending on how that goes. So if you live in New Hampshire, make sure that you are letting your legislator know how you feel about this legislation in advance of this next Senate session. 2 more states to go over, Ohio and Vermont. So in Ohio, current state law has partially decriminalized marijuana use and possession. There's no threat of jail, but it is still considered a misdemeanor punishable by a $150 fine. So in House Bill 628, they seek to legalize adult use of cannabis for 21 and up for up to possession of 2.5 ounces of cannabis, 15 grams of concentrates, and you could cultivate no more than 6 plants per person with a maximum of 12 per household. The bill creates oversight and regulation. It ensures social equity measures are taken and prioritize licensing for existing medical cannabis businesses. So that's HB 628 out of Ohio. All right. Last state before I come back to the comments. Vermont. Current state law in Vermont provides a THC cap of 30% on cannabis flower and 60% in solid concentrates for adult products. HB 548 would allow solid concentrate cannabis products to be over 60% THC, and oil-based cannabis products, with the exceptions, would be removed from this prohibited product list because currently oil-based is not available. This bill would also exempt solid concentrates, oils, and tinctures from the 50 milligram THC limit per package, further expanding adults' access to the regulated cannabis products out on the market. So House Bill 548 has passed the House. The Senate Judiciary Committee has reported it favorably with proposed amendments, and the bill now heads to the Senate floor. So that is what is happening in Vermont. All right. Coming back to the comments, I will go over any states that I had not yet discussed. Okay. Illinois is currently waiting on the governor to take action on some legislation. Let me double check that I have the bill number correct for you. Yeah, there's an expungement and an employee protection bill that are both still moving in Illinois. So as I go through the actions that are not listed in the blog that I posted, I encourage you to go to normal.org/act, hover over that dynamic map over your state, and it'll show you any bills that are currently moving. Not every state has a legislature right now, but in Illinois, you do. Virginia, yours just closed, and there is some information about some enacted legislation that you'll find on the ACT page. California, I chatted about the hearings that had happened in California. Texas, hi Texas, I'm from Texas too. I did discuss that we had a planning meeting to get ready for the 2023 legislative session. But if you live in Austin, early voting is going to be happening for Prop A. I encourage you to look into that. Also, the Texas Compassionate Use Program, our medical program, has opened up for comments and feedback from the public, and we just put up a blog on texasnormal.org about how you can offer feedback. Louisiana, I did cover some legislation that is moving in Louisiana. Kansas, let me double check. I feel like Kansas's session is ending very soon. Oh, actually, it's a month out in Kansas, and there is one bit of legislation that is still alive and moving. So I encourage you to go to normal.org/act and participate in that for Kansas. Someone talking about federal actions. Again, normal.org/act. That is the page to go to. It is the hub. And at the very top are any current federal actions that you might want to participate in. I did talk about Ohio. Alabama, I believe there is one bill that is still technically alive. No, Sine Die happened, and Sine Die, for those that may not know, is the last day of the legislative session, but that was on the 7th. So that legislation is no longer moving in Alabama. Daryl from Texas, yes. So in Texas, we have some things called interim charges because we have a 2-year cycle. So we have our legislature for 140 days in odd numbered years. Then there is an interim during which the political party process and elections and nominations for the ballot occur. And right now there are some interim charges, some that will have to do with veterans' needs, with criminal justice issues, but there are no current meetings on those topics as of yet, though charges have been issued. So do stay tuned for that. All right, that's the states, folks. I'm going to take a point of personal privilege while I'm on here, and I'm going to let anyone from Texas that is watching know that on 420, Texas NORML released our marijuana possession arrest report, comparing numbers from 2017 to 2021. And we did issue a bipartisan press release with Democratic Representative Joe Moody out of El Paso and Republican Representative James White. You can go to our blog and find it there. We did include some very interesting demographics not demographics, graphics about the arrests and demographics, let's say that right, available for you there. And so I wanted to encourage everyone to take a look at that and share that. I know things can get lost in 420. And so I just wanted to highlight that for you guys. And I did want to put it out on 420 in Texas so that we could make sure that in and amongst all of the fun that everybody's talking about, we're having serious conversations about the fact that arrests continue. And while overall arrests have been on decline since the hemp market was legalized, we have seen a significant uptick in the arrests of our Latino and Black Texans. So that is very disturbing. There were some other interesting bits of information that you can find in there. And so I encourage everyone, even if you're not from Texas, there are a lot of people who y'all got it real good with your state laws. We don't. So I encourage anyone who's interested, go to texasnormal.org and you'll see information about our marijuana arrest report. You'll also find the information about how to submit comments on the Texas Compassionate Use Program. Yeah, that's that for Texas. So on that note, I'm just going to say thank you so much for spending some of your Saturday morning with me. And I will be back on the normal day on Friday next week. And just so you know, Morgan Fox is going to be joining us. And, he's our political director and he deals with all of our federal issues out of DC. And so he will be giving us an update on those. So if you're interested on any of these federal actions that are going on, Morgan is going to be available for your questions next week. So I encourage you to tune in on Friday and I will see you then. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in and commenting and participating. See you next week.